the University of Auckland, they found out that there is a big disconnect between the amount of research that is being done and that has been translated into innovations in the real places. Okay? So they thought they should have some thematic research initiative. They call it TRI. And there were several thematic research initiatives. One of them is, of course, the city where I live is Auckland. Auckland is one of the very livable cities, but they want to keep it that way and keep it sustainably livable also. So they were having one theme on that. How do we do that? And so it is not just one idea about environment, but it's about transportation and immigration of people coming there and many other issues. Actually, it's a very interesting topic by itself. But then the next one was about these innovations in manufacturing and materials. And in this, they wanted to take all the ideas available in the university and work together. So they formed a steering committee, and I was asked to represent the business school. And initially, I thought, why did they choose me? Because I think they found my earlier connections, before I moved to New Zealand. I used to be working for Indian Statistical Institute, and in that time, I had a great, opportunity. I would say it is not available in many places. The opportunity was to work with industry as if we are part of them. I know many of my colleagues are invited anytime they want to go there, because the kind of service we gave was to understand your problem and see whether we have any solutions for that and match them. If we don't, we suggest it to our people who do research to find out better solutions. So this way many problems were solved, and that was the reason possibly they said that why don't you be there. But then I took that opportunity and I found an interesting thing. Our engineers and other scientists, this was interesting. This group was formed by the people from art, people from science, and people from engineering and from business. And this is the idea that they wanted all of them to think together. And I found one thing is that they do not know many tools which are very important for working together like that. One of the tools is that, do we really know how to listen? Do we really know how to translate the amount of information or data that is available in spoken words? Because we often need numbers to analyze, but we are very poor in analyzing spoken words. But today, that's a billion-dollar business, because recently I was listening to a very young researcher who was working with Bloomberg. He was saying what they do most of the time is about analyzing natural language data which is coming from different places, because to predict about what will happen to the market, how people will react to that, etc., are all said in terms of words, not in numbers. So that was the reason. So we thought we should not ask for numbers, we should ask for words. So we first did, after the committee was met, we said we should get a lot of data like that. So we sent a questionnaire to every researcher in the university and asked them to answer a few questions. I do have those things. I think I don't have to really show that slides. So, I think I will take, I'm good at, I find these slides interfere rather than I can just go on saying what I say. Maybe I don't remember what I said later. So the thing is, when I found that is important, we should get the information. We gave them the questionnaires and we met after the questionnaire collected. And one of my colleagues, especially Chris and others, in their room, they found all these ideas. They had to write it down in small post-it notes, and then they didn't have enough space. They put it on the walls and the blackboards, everywhere they put. And then they collected and then tried to use some simple tools to bring some sense out of this thing, or what is said. And from that, they could see that there is a lot of disconnect. People are doing different things without knowing what they are doing. Even within an university, this was happening. Actually, I just want to show one slide which we wrote in our paper, of course. For these things you may be knowing, and it was already mentioned about the importance of destructive technologies, and this is about group decision we don't need. And these are about, which was more important to the other side, not to you, to the universities. They don't seem to wake up. Even though they study about many things, They study about business, they study about science, they study about everything about human beings, but they don't seem to wake up because the universities are still functioning in a very old fashion. And so my aim there was to tell them that this is 21st century and we are not doing the right thing. And so the conclusion, I will say the other things are not, this is the conclusion which he came to. A typical university as a system allows coexistence of competing knowledge workers and researchers of all areas of sciences and humanities, law and art. However, it does not exhibit the behavior of a unified organism. I felt this was very wrong because it is something like, a person's body, parts moving in its own way without any coordination. It's almost like that. But this is the way we are talking about highest learning centers. If this is the case, how do you expect, a better understanding people who are managing organizations? Because organizations are also like this. You do have experts, especially the way things are going. Tomorrow's manufacturing is not going to be like it was earlier. You are going to have specialists who are going to understand people's mind, and then there may be psychologists. That's how they are designing cars today. They need psychologists. And they need people who can understand technology very well. And they need people who can understand this modern 3D printing or additive technology and other things. Now you see the complexity of what's going to happen. It's not going to be a simple production place where you set something and go on producing, and then you can use earlier statistical methods, seeing that there is repetition and then you can see the pattern and things like that. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a complex system, and not simple complex system is going to involve professionals. The psychologist is a professional, maybe the designer is another professional and is maybe good in art and other things, and you have other professionals to each of these fields. Now, each of them, they are very good at talking to their own group, okay, and that's what I want to make a point about. So this complex system is what we are having, and of course a complex system is a very interesting field and a lot of work is going on. Actually, it hasn't really come so much into the management part of it, but there are some very good papers and research work telling people the management is not a simple thing. It's a complex system that you are actually saying that you are managing. So as a part of that complex system, how a CEO should behave or how the other people should behave is an interesting thing. And at this point, of course, when I talked about this complex system, I should mention about one research that is being completed this year by one of my students. He is from Pakistan, and he wanted to study corruption. Corruption not, as the way we know common people. Corruption means either we have a moralistic view that it's bad or good, or it is remunerative and things like that. Not about, we don't have an understanding of corruption as we have an understanding of a process which we make. For instance, we have a very good understanding of manufacturing. Otherwise, you would not have an Autodesk like kind of thing, because everything of the science of doing, you know it, and you precisely can predict even before you manufacture. But why don't we have an understanding of corruption? We don't have that. That's because we have not looked at it as a complex system and how things are interconnected. And it comes so nicely, and it's based on an important science which we call system dynamics. What is system dynamics? This kind of systems over time, how they behave. A very simple example is filling a bathtub. Suppose if the bathtub, if you are not plugged in properly, some water will be going in, some water is coming in. Now this is a very simple thing. Now if you, over time you can ask how much water will be, the level of water in the bathtub will be, can be a good question. And easily it should be answered. But unfortunately, human beings are not good at that. This kind of question was asked in MIT, Harvard, and other great schools, PhD students, ordinary people, school students, everybody. And everywhere they find people cannot have a good idea about this amount of water that will be there when you know that water is coming at some rate, leaving at some rate. It's a very simple thing, but human beings are not able to do that. Now this is the problem, okay? So when we don't even understand this, we don't understand the complexity of our own organizations or our own, say like for the problem, financial problem that was told, it's really what's happening is a complex dynamic system, and we are really looking at certain time, snapshots, and we want to understand the whole thing. But you need really know the complete mechanism behind that so that you can understand and possibly predict in a better way. There was an interesting talk in one of the conferences in Switzerland on system dynamics, and this is about economists predicting about milk production. And so they were talking about all kinds of economic variables and then predicting milk production. This author was asking, where is the cow? In that model there was no cow. So the reason is that of course you can talk about milk production, keeping the cow also, and that would require the system dynamic thinking. Now this is what I would like to say, given this time, I would like to say there is a need for a mindset change. That is, when you are managing a complex system, you need to think in terms of system dynamics rather than in terms of a linear, static, because that's not going to, will not capture the picture correctly. And in this case which I talked about, corruption, we could use 30 years of data from from Pakistan, and using this big model that we built after having several interviews with different kinds of people, we could come to an understanding that you can actually simulate that 30-year behavior using this model. Okay, and of course it's a very crude initial model. I mean, I know it can be improved. So what I'm coming to say is that when we understand that this is the system that we are, a complex system that we are managing, and not only complex in the sense that in the usual way, but it's a professional organization. We are all highly qualified people who are proud of their own knowledge. Say, for instance, in a bank, somebody who is like Rajat Mehta would consider himself that his knowledge is something exceptional and the company values it. And there may be some others who are also doing some other thing. So when it comes to them, that specialty, maybe a computer scientist doing something there, they would really not easily accept each other, but they have to work together. That's the kind of predicament. So now what happens is the professional organizations are stuck in the middle, and I don't need to go deeper into that because most of us know what kind of problems I'm talking about. Now see, many hospitals have exceptionally good professionally, great specialists. In spite of that, you find that there are their rates of some of the misgiving, that like giving the wrong medicine and other things still do happen, and also even wrong prescriptions happen. And just because the specialists who are very good in talking to their own group of people, they don't know how to convey this to other set of people, and the other set of people don't listen to them. Now if this happens in an organization, even though you employ very good specialists, it may not be able to deliver the goods. Okay, and I'm skipping many things because it shouldn't be a lecture, but more rather than a conversation with you. And this is kind of a strategy that could be possibly working for an organization. That is a strategy for the organization and its members, create meaning before they make rational decisions. That means a sense making is important, because that is what is different from the problem that we solve otherwise. Suppose an engineering problem, if it is very well structured, sense making is much easier there. But sense making with human beings or other problems like what we are discussing so far. So sense making, relationship building, that really, this is not just, again it's an overworked word, relationship building, but relationship, how do you build really is not, if I'm not going to even listen to you properly, relationship cannot be built. And one of the things which I would like to talk about in this context is that what I found is called the missing middle. The missing middle is over about 40 years of my being a father, consultant, teacher and student. I came to this conclusion, and I call it missing middle hypothesis. And what is this? It is simply stated like this. As a living being, human, we go through experience, and we have a wide distribution of experience that we have. But in this distribution, when we really use what we use is only the extremes. the middle is missing. Because, for instance, if somebody is working under me, I remember the good things he did, the bad things he did. Most of the time what he did, I won't know. Imagine that I use this information for rewarding him. I would be making a big mistake because I did not give any weightage to 98% of the time what happened. Okay, 1% this side and 1% that side, I have given the weightage. Now, as managers, as entrepreneurs, as investors, if you don't use the full distribution for your consideration, you might be making mistake. Now, that's what happens in relationship building. In relationship building, it is over time. Relationship doesn't happen in one stroke. So, when you have interaction over time, it becomes a dynamical problem, and in that dynamics, you should know the complete distribution and you should not work only on the extremes. So, that is, of course, each one of this I can be giving a talk on that, but this is an interesting idea I thought I should share with you, and that is very important in relationship building. And then loose coupling. Loose coupling means that rigid rules or rigid ways of doing things have to be relaxed, but coupling is still there, but it is loose in the sense that it allows flexibility. So, that is very important in complex situations. And finally, diversifying. Not trying to do only one thing that we are good at. We must be really trying to learn many tricks and diversify, because these complex things, what would happen in the environment suddenly, we do not know, and sometimes it cannot completely structurally adjust itself to survive. So, if you have diversity, then you may be able to take 2 shapes, 3 shapes, maybe you can still survive, okay, and that is the idea. And learning organization. Finally, I showed learning organization, and that means that whatever you do, see, we are going through certain experience. What do we do with that experience? It's not just going through that. From that we learn something, and as an organization you have plenty of such knowledge that is coming, and are we really tapping this knowledge, etc. That's the organizational learning part of it. And of course, finally, collaboration process, and I just want to show one, this one picture, because we all want to collaborate, but that happens at the top, and below that you need several things to happen before that, and the one is that intrinsic motivation, and then the trust. That is, say, unfortunately, even in a department, your department is awarded something. Now, how does the department get the award? It's because everybody worked together, but each one is also rewarded. Imagine that. Then the incentive to come together and work so that we can get something together is not going to be there. Now, this is what is called a competition is there, and also you need to collaborate. Now, this is another concept which again, about which one of my students did a PhD thesis on, that is called co-opetition. Okay, this is actually, the work is based on many of the agro industry people, what they did in New Zealand. So, they used to sell kiwi fruit outside and they used to compete, and then they found that they are losing. But they were good in different things, even in kiwi fruit growing. Some are good in logistics, some are good in the information system part, some are good in producing the right kind of fruit, and some in biology, etc. So, when they found out that this is how they are losing, they formed a cooperative, this one, and they decided to have their own brands in the country, but when they want to sell outside, they will use one brand, Gmcv, and then they really set it up, and this is a cooperative, this one, that is, they are ready to share what they know as far as they can win together and then share the benefits. Now, this co-opetition has worked in many industries in New Zealand, in wine industry, in agricultural product like kiwi fruit, apple, and avocado, etc. But they also have done successfully in seafood. Okay. Now, I sometimes compare, New Zealand and Coimbatore is in a way similar. Of course, I think we are least corrupt. I think Coimbatore may be the least corrupt place in maybe in India. So, in this sense, also you have many small industries. We also have many small industries. Now, I feel here, if you can do the cooperative approach in your this one strategy, you can hedge against many things. Some of the risks that was posed could be very much minimized if you do it in a cooperative way. So, I think these are the few things I wanted to share. I think I have exceeded my time, or still I have time. Do I have some more time? That's good. And so I think I have made, and whatever I wanted to connect with others, what they said, I have done that. Oh, this is what one picture, which is very simply, crudely drawn. See, what is happening is that you do have some kind of collaboration connections, but these connections are in certain clusters. Okay. Now, if you look at this picture, even if all those which I have marked with the red line, those things are existing, to get the full benefit, there is one thing called this brokerage point. Now, that one person or one organization can play such a vital role. I think that is the important point. I would say that if you are really thinking of networking in that way, this brokerage has to be done consciously, that we have one place which will link, and then they have their own links. But then if you can do that way, and then make sure that the importance of that is also there in the gain sharing, because that this happened because of that, so we also are ready to share. Because in co-opetition, most important thing is, it's not that you somehow come together, but do you stay together and grow? So what is required for that? So what we have done, another research with my colleague from Italy, what we are doing is to study this co-opetition from a game theoretic point of view, because the game theory doesn't study this kind of thing. Either it studies competition or it studies cooperation, but it doesn't study when you need some of this and some of that. So we have found out a right model for that, and we also applied it for the kiwi fruit growers case, and the paper is went for publication, still waiting for that. Now the idea is that we can find out in that model, mathematical model, game theoretic model, what is important is how are you going to share the gains. So if you can come together, but if you don't have the fair share of what you have contributed and what to commensurate with that, you are not going to be interested in that, or it will fail. I think we should avoid this failure, knowing what kind of mechanisms will work and what will not work, etc. I think with that I would conclude my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your thought.